Hey summoners, make sure you're subscribed to the Mobalytics YouTube channel and hit that bell button, that way you're always up to date and part of our notification squad. Hello summoners and welcome back to the Mobalytics patch 8.18 video tier list. This patch was pretty small, and that's because Riot is preparing for the World Championships and doesn't want to drastically change the meta and have what happened a couple years ago with the Mordekaiser and Juggernaut update right before the championships. Yeah, so this patch is going to be pretty small. I mean, there's not really much else to say. Let's just get into the tier list. I hope you're all having a nice week, I guess. I hope Wednesday is going pretty well for you guys, or Thursday, whenever you see. Who writes the scripts around here? Starting off in the top lane, we have Scion's reign continuing. We have a couple new faces moving up and around. Renekton got some decently nice buffs. The thing about the Renekton buffs is that if you buff his armor pen on his E, that means that in some matchups when he needed to take Conqueror first, now he might be able to take Press the Attack, which if you know anything about Renekton, he would much prefer to do so. And we have seen the rise and the terror of Urgot. Urgot has made his way into the scene and finally got some time in the spotlight, and he's even seeing a good amount of competitive play. This is because of the overall meta. It's really hard to kill him in general, plus the Unsealed Spellbook being a very good rune choice for him. Where Urgot has always struggled is in his ability to essentially transition his lead into the late game because he's so slow, he's so clunky. He just has problems being able to do what he needs to do. But with Unsealed Spellbook, having things like a Ghost to be able to get into the backline and maneuver, having things like a Cleanse or an Exhaust, all these types of summoner spells are really nice for him and allow him to be the champion he needs to be. His laning phase is incredibly dominant as always, and he beats every single melee matchup in the game. There's not a single melee champion that can deal with him 1v1, and that's why he jumps up way in the tier list as well as in popularity. Yeah, playing against Urgot as a melee champion is basically saying, whew, that's a lot of fun. I'm having a lot of fun playing League of Legends today. That's a nice video game character right there. And then for high elo, you do see a couple things jump up. Of course, you see things like Riven doing much better in high elo. Of course, this is in part because players are just better at Riven in high elo and one-trick her more often, but also she just tends to do better in these quicker, snowbally type of games. Some other things that do well, of course, things like Camille, Jace, these are all things that are going to be doing better in high elo. The higher mechanical cap champions and higher learning curve champions are going to be much better. Alright, on to the jungle tier list, where we've seen a couple things drop down. Over the last couple of patches, Kayn and Evelynn have been doing slightly better, but also Shaco has been doing worse. Duskblade nerfs on top of Stormrazor nerfs, kind of making it a bit harder for him to carry. For B tier stuff, you have pretty standard champions that have been doing well, especially the easy ones, things like Warwick, Wukong, Volibear, Shyvana, Master Yi, and Zal Jarvan. If you like any of these champions, all of them are pretty simple to play and will bring you a lot of success if that's what you're looking for. If you're looking for something slightly easier but that's been doing well, of course you can always play Graves in S tier, but again, he's picked and banned so much that you might want to look more towards things like Nocturne. Rammus is definitely a champion that has been doing well. He received a couple of buffs along with Amumu and other tanks on the previous couple of patches. What makes Rammus so good is his ganks are just unstoppable, right? He just runs at you with Powerball, he rolls at you, and kills you, and it's really hard to get out of. He is okay at skirmishing, but in the higher ranks, that is exactly where he struggles, is that you'll get beat up by things like Nidalee and things like Lee Sin, who are really good at the game. But as far as lower MMRs, it's really easy just to snowball and do well with Rammus. His farming is okay once you complete your Cinderhulk, or at least get the Bomby Cinder. And as far as the rest of it, again, gank's super good, really tanky, great CC. He does everything you need out of a low elo jungler. For the higher MMR, things like Talia and things like Camille go up in priority quite a bit, and they become some of the best junglers in the game. On top of that, Evelynn is good, Nidalee is really good, and things like Rengar and Rek'Sai will pop up. Also, something like Ivern is a bit experimental right now, but has been doing well, although has a very low pick rate. So we'll see where Ivern and things like Rek'Sai will end up on the next couple of patches, but right now they seem pretty good, and with games going longer, it's also why you see things like Ivern and things that are scaling, like Kindred, doing well. For the mid lane, we do have two of our picks of the week here, and we're just going to get into those. As far as the rest of mid lane, honestly, it's the exact same as the previous patch. Things that are good are still pretty darn good. Things like Cassio are doing well as a follow-up to our last pick of the week, but pretty much the rest of it is all there, and mid lane hasn't changed too much on this patch, aside from Vel'Koz. So Vel'Koz is going to be Adam's pick of the week and has been rising up a lot. I'm sure if you saw LCS this last weekend, you saw Bjergsen whip it out, and if you saw the Korean games last night, even Faker played some Vel'Koz. The reason this champion is good is a new and innovative build with the Glacial Augment and the Twin Shadows. On top of that, he's pretty good with GLP, so it's this entire setup where you basically just perma-slow them and you can't really miss your Vel'Koz skill shots, and turns out you don't really need damage on Vel'Koz if you can hit them with your full rotation because it just one-shots them. So this build is pretty good. Vel'Koz has been riding up, and I think he is a very strong champion. So Adam's pick of the week, I like your pick, man, good pick. As for my pick of the week, I went with Viktor. Now, Viktor did receive some buffs on this patch, and overall, he's still not that great of a champion for climbing, but the better and better you get at him and the higher elo you go, the more successful you're going to be. On top of that, it's more of a meta prediction. I suspect that in Worlds, we're going to see a lot more of Viktor, and if we do see him, he's probably going to be oppressive and annoying to see at Worlds, but overall, I like Viktor, and I think he's pretty good. The way that you want to play him is going for a pretty damage-heavy build with your Perfect Hex Core into Lichbane and then Death Cap, or if you need to go more defensive, you can get yourself a Zhonya's. Overall, I'm not huge on the Rylai's build because they did nerf it a while ago, but you could try it if you want. As for the high elo mid lane, we have things like Aurelia, LeBlanc, and Kassadin moving into S tier. These champions have all been performing great. Both Kassadin and Aurelia did receive buffs, and LeBlanc is really oppressive with the Corrupting Pot, Time Warp Tonic, Biscuits thing. It's annoying to play against LeBlanc. I personally play LeBlanc, and I can tell you she's pretty darn good right now. She is just hard to pilot and work properly, but if you're really good at LeBlanc, especially in higher MMR, holy, this champ is so good and so oppressive. For our bottom lane friends in the normal tier list, we have Misfortune and Yasuo doing well in S tier. The rest of it, we have a couple things moving up and around. Twitch did drop down from S into A, but is still a very good champion. Lucian received some nice buffs on this patch, and we did see him move into A. Things like Vayne are going to come back. On top of her buffs, the meta is more favored towards her with more tanks being played. Things like just Sion, Garen, Nasus, Alawi, all these big tanks people are playing. It's obviously great for Vayne. Mordekaiser is not played and utilized nearly as well as he should be. I think Mordekaiser is something we could all agree that is really good bot lane, and just nobody likes to play him. Mordekaiser is buggy and a little bit counterintuitive to play, but overall he's a great champ. Things like Draven did drop down due to the Stormrazor nerfs, but Draven can just go for a more lifesteal build anyway. Other than that, the bot lane is pretty much the same as last patch, so let's go into the higher MMR ones. We do have things slightly moving around, so Draven and Misfortune will swap places, and then things like Swain are doing really good for bot lane. Things like Kai'Sa are on the cusp of moving into A tier, despite receiving some direct nerfs, and things like Graves ADC are good. Things like Jinx will drop down and switch places. So overall, again, it's pretty much going to be the same. You have these really oppressive and great things for solo climbing, like Yasuo, Draven, Misfortune, and Twitch, and pretty much across all elos, these are going to be your go-to things, with the exception of maybe Lucian in that equation as well. And lastly, for support, we are seeing a couple new faces moving up. Brand is still doing well, and Nami has been here for I don't even know how long at this point. All season, Nami's been your best S tier support. Just across the board, she does really well. Things like Sona and Leona are still doing great, and we recommend them for sure. Things like Zillion, Zyra, Alistar, all very good. Taric is still doing well. And then we have our last pick of the week in B tier for Lulu. Lulu has become more difficult to play now that they nerfed her shields and you have to time them better, but she is starting to see a small comeback. You want to max your E into W into Q, take Sorcery primary with Airy, Mana Flow Band, Transcendence, and Scorch, and the Resolve Tree secondary a majority of the time with Bone Plating and Chrysalis. If you don't feel threatened by your lane, you could go Inspiration secondary with Cosmic Insight, but you definitely want to take Ignite and look to bully people hard. Lulu has always been really good at trading in lane, and she can secure kills with aggressive flash plays early on. Don't pick her with things like Ezreal, but do try picking her with things like Kog'Maw and Twitch, and buffing up your ADC. Take Lucidity Boots over Moby Boots if you feel like you're not very good at roaming. And then lastly, for high elo supports, the only things we start to see pop up are things like Pike and Rakan doing much better, things like Bard and Thresh. Basically, the really hard to play supports obviously are going to be doing better in high elo as well, so those are pretty much the big changes. Taric slightly drops down, things like Leona and Sona are pretty much where they need to be, Leona slightly being down, and Blitzcrank, Soraka, and Morgana doing better. Anyway, that is going to wrap it up for the Mobalytics patch 8.18 video tier list. Make sure you let us know in the comment section down below what you thought of this tier list and leave your questions for next week's Q&A. Thanks for watching.